To many, flying their own airplane is just a dream never realized. But to these Shell Point women, flying was a goal that they not only achieved, but thrived at.
The interest in flying began when I was in college at Northwestern University as an undergraduate student, and my husband, Brad, was a graduate student, and he was in pilot training in one of the very small airports called Ravenswood in the Chicago area. So that began an interest. So I would fly with Brad, and after our children were old enough, I became more interested. So we took our small plane at that time to Florida in 1985, and Brad had been easing me into it by teaching me how to navigate and how to communicate. And he found at times it was very helpful to have me communicate because the controllers seemed to love to give me the best runway so that they could get us out of the sky. They didn't know, of course, who was flying. So it was a 13-hour trip back to the Kansas City area where we were based. And we touched down and I said, I'm getting my ticket. I'm not going to put you through this anymore. So that really began my interest in earnest. I got my license, and from there, the rest is history. We had children in college, and individually, I flew them quite frequently to and from college. We had a commercial charter operation, and so we did take charters around the country, mostly in the Midwest, and we just managed to enjoy private trips as well as commercial trips. Some of our more exciting experiences in flying were in bad weather. Some of the most exciting and worst experiences were over the panhandle of Florida. When we were with or in our 421 twin engine, it was pressurized, so we could get above the weather. But it seemed that being between the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic was something we could just anticipate every time we flew to Florida. And we've been flying to Florida since the early 90s, at least once a year. We managed to get over the weather, and we were at the time going to pick up a son in college in Oklahoma, but all of a sudden we dropped 6,000 feet. And we weren't sure how far we were going to drop. And fortunately, it's a big sky up there, and no one happened to be below us. But of course, the center questioned why we changed altitudes without permission. We then landed in Tulsa, Oklahoma to pick up our son from college. And although we had de-icers on our wings, they couldn't handle the ice. And so we were grateful to get on the ground. And it was probably one of the more frightening days. After 2 experiences, we decided, I think maybe we're not going to go for 3, so we spent the night in Tulsa. We had 2 charter operations. One was Pro Air, like our name, ProCop, and Pro Air 2. We had a total of 5 pilots, and this was a private charter. And companies at the time, or individuals who were interested in traveling in the area, primarily the Great Plains, air access was rather limited. The closest commercial airport, of course, at that time was in Kansas City or Wichita. We also did a little mountain flying in Colorado, which is of interest. We didn't have any exciting experiences except just the thrill of flying in the mountains. Flying into and out of Aspen is a one-way in and one-way out. And 2 of us were members of the 99s. The chapter, three. Excuse me. But of general interest, I think, to all the viewers might be the relationship to Amelia Earhart. And of course, Amelia is still of great interest to most people. The chapter of the 99s that I was in was the Eastern Kansas chapter, which was Amelia Earhart's chapter. At the time, the 99s were formed in 1929. And so every year, on a yearly basis, there was, and still is, to the best of my knowledge, a aviation gathering in Atchison, Kansas, which is Amelia's home. They've turned the home, her lifelong home, and where she was born, into a museum. And we paint a lot of numbers on the runways. We land planes for people coming in from all over the country, and just keep up with what's going on with aviation. And the very first year I went, Amelia's sister was one of the guests, along with several women who flew in the Women's Army Corps service pilots during the war that serviced planes and piloted planes all over. And so there are a lot of activities that do bring women together in the 99s, and I think we were always very generous in including our husbands.
Yes.
My best experience was, I think, taking the family and going through extremely bad weather out to Washington, D.C., and landing and looking around and seeing 3 of our 4 children behind us. I don't think I was ever happier in my entire life.